Hey guys, welcome to Evolution Now. This is the 25th podcast. I'm your host, Damien Chinappi, alongside JJ Wolf. Our guest today is an award-winning actor, a touring musician, coach, and he is CEO of Dude Nation. He's also a wellness consultant that focuses on men's emotions. If you're a 90s kid, you will undoubtedly remember him as the face of Dell Marketing. It's our pleasure to welcome to the Evolution Now project, Ben Curtis.
Dude,
Pleasure. Very excited to have you on today's chat, and undoubtedly, I think we're going to get into some really good topics. And yeah, curious to see where it goes. So, JJ, you want to start us off?
Yeah. Ben, you've got quite the professional history, man. You're an interesting character, and I'm definitely lucky to have you as a friend in this life. So, let's just go right into it with a question I think a lot of people are curious about: is how did you get the Dell gig, and how did that change your life after it?
yeah, thank you. For those of you who don't know what they're referring to, the Dell gig was when I was hired as the face of Dell Computers for their holiday campaign in year 2000. So I am a boy from Tennessee. I've always had a dream to be an actor. Acting helped me be safe as a child, learn how to adapt in potentially traumatic situations. I've become a great, and I love people and I love understanding people, especially people I don't understand. And so, acting it was just a no brainer. I went to NYU on an acting scholarship. I was full out like, I'm going to do this. I lived in New York, my summers off in between college to try to get in the industry earlier. And I was like bringing headshots into people's offices and like hitting the pavement, man, knocking doors, old school with my black and white headshot. Looked like I was on a soap opera. And yeah, I put the word out. And finally, a buddy of mine's like, oh, I hear you're into acting. My friend's mom just got me an acting job. And I'm like, dude, you're in business school. You don't even want to be an actor. Hook me up. And his friend's mom is a manager, and her name's Renata English. And she sent me out on a couple jobs to see how I do. I booked every single one of them. And the next thing I know, she was like, well, let's see how you do on this commercial. They're looking for kids ages 13 to 17. I know you're like about to turn 20, so dress young. And I was the only guy there without my mom because I was over 18. There was all shapes and sizes. It's very clear that Dell wasn't quite sure who they wanted yet. So I just knew to be me. And that's the best advice I can give to anyone doing anything is be yourself, because you're the only one who's you. And it was a no brainer. They were like, this is the guy. I knew how to manipulate my parents, getting them to buy things growing up. That was like my MO, like sell this, hustle this. I would do my own yard sales. So this kid who's like making a home video for his parents about what he wants for Christmas, and he's got like the drawings and the research and the buddy. I was like, oh, I know this kid. And so the commercial did so well that it just kept going and going and going. I don't think anyone knew how big it would be, but that was the beginning of Dell, and it changed my life forever.
Wow. Such an incredible story to imagine such a youngster, who's got a big dream. And like you said, pounding the pavement, knocking the doors, bringing around those black and white headshots, and a couple good things happen. And someone said, well, hey, why don't you try out this? And so I remember, because you're just a couple years older than me, I remember growing up and seeing those commercials, man. I don't know if you're legally allowed to say it, but I think I could say it is, dude, you're getting a Dell? And I recall, like, it might have even been someone in homeroom when I was 12 years old might have said it, like, as a social joke in class, because it was so culturally relevant at that time, And so I would love to ask you, one, so how many did they end up doing? And we'll move on from this topic.
Yeah, no, it's cool. I love talking about it.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
So how many did you end up doing? And what was it like becoming a household name at a young age in that context? Because commercials, some could say, are seen even more widely than TV shows, because the commercials go across different series and things like that.
Yeah, and that's a great question. This was actually at the beginning height of Facebook. So this was kind of before Facebook was doing ads. My mom was on, I don't think I had a Facebook account yet, actually, when I booked this role. I think my mom did first. So social media was new. I had a MySpace. That's what we were rocking then. And we ended up doing 26 commercials over the course of 3.5 years. I did about 12 personal appearances. I got to fly around the country, and I got to meet, I hosted the Sundance Film Festival one year. I got to meet Matt Damon and Ben Affleck, and they were shooting Project Greenlight, and Casey Affleck was there. And I met some like famous DJs late at night there. And I was flown to meet Michael Dell and like talk to all the salespeople when they were working overtime during Christmas. And so I got to speak at a few different conferences for Dell, and they even trained me on soundbite speaking and like how a politician might be like in a room giving me feedback and testing me with questions. And it was a really phenomenal experience. And also a lot of voiceovers and things. So basically they kind of paid for my likeness. I could do other commercials, just not computers, but it was for 3.5 years, contract after contract after contract. And it got up to, started about probably $20,000 or so for around the first contract, and buyouts for residuals. And it ended up, the last contract that I lost when I got arrested was $500,000. And that was going to like set us up for life. And my, so to speak, my manager, we were all going to get flown first class everywhere. She said Steven Spielberg called her that year to try to get me in. But there was something that happened, and I'll get to that first. I'll get to that later, because you asked about like, what was it like to be a household name overnight then? So I was in college full-time at NYU. The acting program is one of the most demanding in the country, one of the hardest to get into. They really encourage you not to audition so that you can actually be present in school. So sure enough, as this took off, it started to pull me in and out of school, which was me going to acting class 3 days a week in a conservatory with Lee Strasberg, or the Atlantic Theater Company with William H. Macy, and Philip Seymour Hoffman was speaking at Stella Adler then. And like these guys were around, and we were watching them and talking to them. And I was so cleared. I got into theater. My dad was a priest. I watched him at the pulpit, like moving the audience. I got to meet David Copperfield when I was a little kid. So I was an illusionist. That's kind of how I dealt also with the chaos in my home, was like performing for people. So I had a great sense of wanting to be famous, but I didn't know what it would be like. And I used to say, I want to be as famous as David Copperfield. No, I want to be as successful as David Copperfield, but I never want to be that famous, because it seems like he has no public life. And sure enough, when the commercial got really big, it got bigger than I knew. I was in school a lot. I was struggling to stay in. I started to get more and more auditions. Agents just expect you to go no matter what. And I was feeling really torn. And that level of, it was confusing because I didn't watch TV. I was working, I was studying, I was being a teenager. And suddenly I was receiving feedback, and everyone was becoming obsessed with it and with me. And what kind of started to happen, even in my friendships, and my friends will say this today, my best friends who are still in my life are like, everywhere we went, it became, a focus on me. And even when I was dating a girl, like her family would kind of hyper focus on me. My parents and mom would I'd go home and they'd be like, "Oh, this is our son, the Dell Dude, say the thing." And so it was fun at first, but then I saw myself like, I'm becoming like this product, and people are like, "Perform for me, monkey. And why aren't you making us more money?" And it didn't feel good and aligned with my purpose. And I remember getting scared as I was getting flown out for like stoner roles and like horribly written scripts. I was like, this is going to ruin my career if I book this. And so you can see my hands. I was starting to like do this energetically. And getting more and more famous, like every morning being interviewed by someone. I was on the Tonight Show with Jay Leno. I was on Good Morning America, like everything. I was on TRL with Carson Daly, we like in Times Square. And so it was so intense. And then I had to drop out of school basically, and it got bigger and bigger and bigger. And then September 11th happened. I'd just taken some of that money to move out of the dorms into my first adult apartment, and it was in the financial district, and it was 2.5 blocks south on Rector and Broadway, south of the World Trade Center. So basically moved into ground zero. I took the Landmark Forum in the World Trade Center a month later. If you don't know about Landmark, it's one of the greatest personal growth and development organizations out there. So I had this like mind-blowing weekend, and then literally the towers blew my mind even more. I had severe PTSD, and now I was famous. So it felt like World War III was in our backyard, and I'm like, how do I take care of myself? How do I not lose my career? How do I stay in school? And I'm making lots of money and just getting more and more famous. So I'm going out. My friends are like pulling me to the front of nightclubs, giving me bottles and drugs. And I'm buying things for everybody. And I'm starting to just basically like drugs, alcohol, people. And I was self-sabotaging and self-medicating, really what was happening. I had undiagnosed post-traumatic stress, and I needed help, but instead I was pushed further. So what you don't see like from Hollywood is a lot of, when you get successful, the responsibilities get so big so fast, and you become kind of it feels like a puppet sometimes. And so trying to find your center in there, especially, a 20-year-old who's, I'm 43 now. I'm still like just starting to understand who I am and what I love. So, I feel like it takes us a long time. I was lost and I really needed guidance. And it took me getting arrested and that going on national television for cannabis, for like 1/8 of weed. And the tagline was, "Dude, you're getting a cell." I actually still have a little cutout from a newspaper article. I don't know if you can see some of it. That's this newspaper reporter, paparazzi snapped this as I was coming out of prison. And I took this article, and while it felt like a source of shame for a while, eventually I got better. I got help. I got sober. Got a coach. I found men's groups. But that's where it kind of ended, story. And then the next chapter began.
Wow.
So when you say what it's like, it's hard for me not to tell you the whole story because it's so unique. And it's just wild. Yeah.
The context, you paint the picture of like what was going on in the world at that time.
Yeah.
Things like September 11th. Coming into yourself, like you said, you didn't realize how famous you were going to get. You weren't even watching TV, so you didn't really realize. And then all of a sudden, you're on all these late night shows, and you're showing up. What do you say, TRL in Times Square?
Yeah.
It's such a wild ride. I can only imagine. And what a grand irony too, as we, 20 years or so later, marijuana is becoming legal and is already very.
Cannabis is like the fastest growing industry. One of them right now. Yeah.
It's such a shame. We could do a whole episode. I don't know if you saw 13th, something about the 13th Amendment. There's a documentary about just how disproportionately people are put behind bars. But the idea that
I've been arrested 3 times and I'm white, so I can only imagine what it's like for a lot of other people out there.
Oh man,
your story is very interesting, Ben, because again, the fame, the money, the success, the pull in an industry that so many people think they want. And then you got, I don't know if it's the pinnacle, but you certainly got to the upper echelons of this glamour-filled industry that everyone's just pulled to. And you saw firsthand how it affected you. And I like that you were like this. And as a young man, getting all that stuff thrown at you, the girls, the drugs, the influence, the access to things. It really speaks that early success can be the exact opposite of that. It can set you up for a fall, which, I get it. Smoked a little weed, you got caught, you got arrested. So the whole process of creating boundaries, that's a key thing. Having that internal kingdom, having that order, which is a big part of masculinity. Being able to create boundaries and to create a sense of security within self. So how did your fall from
Sorry, I had no sense of security in myself then. And thank you for saying boundaries. What a beautiful, important word.
So getting arrested and falling from fame, having this fall from grace, how did that force your own personal evolution moving forward?
That's a beautiful question, Damien. It was like a pressure cooker. You know, diamonds are made under pressure sometimes. I could have easily killed myself. I was, there were definitely drugs and things I did at times that could have taken me out. And I'm amazed that I'm still alive today. I feel looked after. And I think luckily, I want to say this. I grew up in the South. Generations of trauma in my family, but my parents were the first ones to both do something about it and get into therapy and encouraged me to as a kid and to talk about my feelings. So one thing that I did get from my childhood that was really positive was emotional intelligence. And I didn't realize I had that until these things happened. So I started asking for help. And luckily my father of all people was the one who heard it. And he flew up from Tennessee to sit with me and go through my mail and help me get a therapist and help me get some diagnosis and help me just handle life. I was really in it alone. And I think that's the one thing that happens to so much of us. We try to do everything alone, especially as men. We're trained to do things alone, and that shows some sense of honor or pride. But if, being and doing things alone worked, we wouldn't have solitary confinement as a punishment. So the power of having a higher power and being open to a higher power. I remember one day I was waiting for a cocaine delivery, and the sun had just come up, and this bell rang, and I looked out over ground zero and I could see this church. And I literally had this experience that God was trying to wake me up out of my misery. And I think one of the greatest things that's come out of it was that starting the willingness to surrender. I started sharing my story that I was a victim of 9/11. And it was kind of like a cool thing for me to be like the celebrity who was damaged because of, what I went through. And I think that's all I knew at that time because I was going through it. But it was actually in a landmark course. I had a coach once say, do you want to how much longer do you want to live as a victim of 9/11? That sounds pretty heavy. Would you be interested in letting go of that? And no one I hadn't even considered that as an option. I didn't even know I was holding on to it. And I worked with this coach. We did it a somatic exercise a few different times. And I felt an energy weight drop. And I saw a possibility. And it took me a little while, but that was the beginning of, there's a lot of talk about integrity there, which is a very important part of masculinity as well. How I was treating my body and myself did not have integrity. How I was speaking about myself did not have integrity. The people I'd surrounded myself with did not have integrity. I broke up with my girlfriend. Because I was in a abusive relationship verbally. I had allowed myself to be dominated because I had lost my masculine power. And so my partner was forced to dominate and just came at me, and I crumbled. So I put everything down and started really focusing on building blocks of integrity slowly. Part of sobriety in a 12-step program is you got a group around you. If you're a man, you have a man hold space for you. You have a clear structure, which is also part of healthy masculinity. You have your word. You have your relationship to a higher power. Every day you're doing rigorous honesty. Your recovery is based on today's work. Faith without works is dead, is the saying. So you can't just talk about it. You have to take action. And so it actually forced me to take action. And then I turned around 10 years later, and I'm sitting with my therapist, and she was like, I don't even know if you need, you might be done with therapy. You seem really good. And I was like, holy shit. I think I am I've never been this well. And I kind of started owning, I took that Dude, You're Getting a Cell. I created a play, a one-man show. It's on YouTube. It's 20 minutes. I played the cop who arrested me. I played myself. I played the demons inside of me. I brought magic and illusion and storytelling together to talk about how we can set ourselves free from our suffering of ourselves. and the importance of like the only person keeping you in the cell is yourself. And so it's a daily reminder to me to like step out of the cell, and that I put these like the things we make up about ourselves are like the bars we put around us to keep us safe or to keep us locked. And so part of integrity and masculinity, and what I got out of all this, Damien, was like the gift of being surrounded with integrity and asking for more and asking to be held to my highest self, and attracting and building those kinds of friendships. And now I just like have to help men who've been through this, who've been through PTSD or any challenge in their life. Cause I've watched, when you go through that, like I can talk to soldiers, I can talk to anyone who's lost anything. You know, I know how we can build ourselves back up. And it starts with claiming like, if I'm okay or not today, you know, and honesty and integrity. So that's kind of a long way around it, but that's really what came out of this was, you know, just willingness to say, I don't know, and help me. And here's my truth.
And I just want to jump in because there's so many things that you touched on that I've had to visit in my own process of evolution. And I'm very introspective. I think having a journal and reviewing it is of the utmost importance for anybody that wants to get to that next level. I mean, therapy and emotional intelligence, really to have emotional access, which is one of the biggest things as an artist you need. That's the core work of acting to me, is breaking down those internal boundaries, opening them up, being okay with being vulnerable, being okay with being hurt, and then having the awareness and presence of mind to know that you can always recover. And each time it's like going through a death, which you certainly went through. You had the version of you that was famous, that was the center of attention, fall from grace. In your own ashes, you had to rise. And we talk about the Phoenix on this podcast a lot. Because death hurts. It hurts to burn and to fall apart, but you become stronger. And so willingness is a very strong proponent of growth because it comes from the predisposition that you are going to confront. You are willing to put yourself into the unknown. Subconsciously, the unknown is death, and it is death. It's death of your ignorance. It's death of your naivety. And through that, you surrender. You go, hey, man, the higher power is very strong because it's a narrative that allows you to connect with something outside yourself. You get out of that illusion that it's all about me. And that when you connect with that higher power, you have the strength of the entire universe. And it's not necessarily comfortable. And so I love so much about what you're talking about. In therapy, it's to me, being able to understand yourself and contextualize the dark periods of your life helps you enjoy the good periods.
Yeah. Oh, and I have a therapist again today. She's a couples counselor. So my wife and I have an active practice to work on a relationship, whether we're doing well or not. And some weeks we're like, what are we going to talk about? Like, we'll find something to be supported around. So I still have that practice of a coach, a therapist, and like group of advisors around me too.
That's great. And it is a practice. It's like showering. You don't shower once and you're good. You always have to comb through the details and understand, because you can always get sharper or you can always get dimmer. There's no neutral because time is always flowing. So let me ask you, Ben, what is masculinity to you?
This is great. This is the second time I've gotten to answer this question in like 24 hours. I love it. Thank you, universe, for that. Well, I'll say masculinity from my perspective. I want to talk a little bit about, so yin yang, right? There's yin is the softer energy, yang is the more powerful energy, but one without the other can't exist. I feel that feminine, so I'm going to talk about bowling for a second. So I really feel like masculinity is structure, order, integrity, authenticity. And it's like the how smooth and incredible a bowling lane is, like the perfect wax, the perfectly flat floor, the pins, the gutters, and masculinity is almost like the little like the bumpers you put in. And femininity is like the energy of flow and chaos and movement and creativity. And when you throw the ball, like what happens inside of that. But the masculinity keeps it in a lane, right? It has a funnel for it to go through. So I see For me, masculinity is part of energy, and I think everyone has a masculine and feminine energy, and for me, it's about balancing it for myself. I even have conversations. One of my business partners and advisors, Amy Bliss, who's going to be speaking at DudeCon. She's a master men's coach, specialist on trauma for men and sex and relationships for men. And we talked about this. She was like, yeah, man, I was like over rotated towards like my masculine yesterday. And I checked in with him and he's like, yeah, dude, I'm burned out. Like you've been using me way too much. Got to balance a little bit there. So I love that anyone and everyone can talk about this, but for me, it's also about my power, my purpose. And I think I said authenticity, integrity. And yeah, I think that sums it up for me.
Said, have you ever heard of the book Warrior King Magician Lover?
Yeah, I have it on my bedside table right now.
Amazing. And
Yeah.
I love the idea of positive and negative poles.
Yeah.
And you said a lot of great stuff, which I agree with 100%. It's a balance, masculine and feminine energy. Creative acts are feminine. Think of the womb. It's darkness. It's chaos, birth. But it's the order that gives structure to the materials. Like Socrates had this great quote. It's something like, it's not the materials that make up a house. It's the structure and order. It's like how you put them together.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so let me ask, what role does aggression play in masculinity?
What role does aggression play? Well, it's pretty open. I could interpret that a lot of different ways. I think aggression is really natural in humans. You see it in kids and animals, and I think it's part of masculinity. We actually in Dude School, one of the programs I lead in Dude Nation is a 12-week masterclass on masculinity. And one of the weeks we talk about anger and rage. And we have a few different exercises to help practice that safely. I think it's important. I think men need safe spaces to practice anger and aggression. Otherwise, it comes out in really unhealthy ways. That's where abuse comes in, whether it's towards yourself or someone else. So I think it's absolutely important to find ways to channel it without nurturing it. I don't think we want to say, yes, more aggression, bring more aggression, always when we're feeling that. But if we have aggression, I think it's a great thing. Anger, and we can define them a little differently, but anger is usually a symptom of pain, something going on underneath. It's like a cavity, and you touch it and you're like, oh, ow. That expression is that anger, right? That aggression. But what's underneath the surface is a pain point, actually. And that's your response. So if we're not looking at what's under that and how are we dealing with it, then I think that aggression can be, what we hear in society called toxic masculinity or something. It gets expressed in ways that aren't healthy. But, you look at football players and the importance of they knock the shit out of each other and then they get up and hug each other, or pat each other on the butt, give them a kiss, So I think there's a place for it if channeled correctly.
And that's so important to be able to channel it, to be able to channel that aggression so that it doesn't boil over, right? Like the kettle exploding. It's our it's the aggression that is part of that, like you said, in the yin yang, which can't exist without one another. It's the aggression that's contained in that more yang portion of the yin yang, and it's this balance that we're always teeter-tottering, right? Trying to find that perfect balance. And as you said, we don't want to amplify the anger or the aggression, but rather we want to find safe ways to vent, to let out, to release, to open that control valve, to be able to release some of the pressure so that people can, go about their daily lives without having negative interactions. It's like, I think it was Jordan Peterson, right? We don't want to be a warrior. It's better to be a gardener in a war than a war. How's that quote?
Better to be a warrior in a garden than a garden in a war. A gardener and a warrior, and in a war. Ben, I love the fact that you're so nuanced with anger because it's not simple. It's complex. The emotional spectrum of humans is complex. It's different for everyone. There are similarities, but it's per the individual. And again, keeping that aggression in its proper time and place, because aggression can win wars. Aggression can create structure, and a war between yourself and your shadow. And awareness is the great equalizer in the game of change, in my opinion. So I was at the gym yesterday, and I always check in with myself, and I found that when I go, hey, I'm not happy, by accepting that, I feel better. And that in the gym, I'm like, I don't need happy right now. I don't need it. And I love being able to have controlled aggression, because that's great for lifting weights. That's great for overcoming your own insufficiency. You're battling your ego. And that to me is wielding a power. That's a big part of masculinity. It's that order. And through order, you create security. And that the more willingness, to your earlier story, the more you engage with the act of willingness, the more familiar you get with going into the unknown. With familiarity, again, there is security. So you build the part of your internal order that is that warrior spirit that will go into the unknown and know how to get what you want out of it, whatever that is. And
acting is, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, at the end of the day, I think going into the unknown is knowing it's going to be hard, there's going to be pain, but I can have the aggression with my ego while balancing the compassion for myself to stay grounded enough to promote order. And then just to finish up the thought, I don't believe in toxic masculinity. I don't like that term. I believe in immature masculinity. And that's the negative components of those four major archetypes, where you're trying to manipulate, you're trying to bully, you're trying to sabotage, or the lover, the negative part of the lover is you either become sterile or you become addicted. You engage too much in the pleasures of the world. But yeah, you were about to say something.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I love this discussion, guys. I'm so grateful for this. I just had a vision of me in an acting class channeling aggression like 20 years ago. And I was like, wow. I used to say, I still believe this. Every American should have to wait tables. In Israel, you have to be in the army for 2 years. I think in America, you should have to wait tables for 2 years, and you should have to take some acting classes. So you learn so much about yourself and how to channel these things safely. However, we were talking about it earlier and how it can be great to be an actor like that. It's a safe place to play, but I'm amazing. My wife and I'm just going to share this right out. We're incredibly sexually liberated on stage. If you saw us perform in our band, you'd be like, these are sex is dripping off the walls. These guys have like the craziest, most amazing sex life in the world. We haven't. We've had to work at it. We feel safer being self-expressed on a stage than we do in our regular life, because it's like a mask. It's appropriate place to play, but it's not always reality. So it's one thing to have that energy and to work with it, but to actually channel that into the bedroom or wherever we decide to, make love or indulge each other is that's a practice, especially in a long-term relationship. And the other thing I want to say, kind of totally switching gears, is anger, to go back to that, and boundaries. I wanted to share this before, because you brought up boundaries at the beginning. You heard that, my story or lack thereof. And then we talked about anger. I believe that anger and aggression is a great sign, sometimes for me, that a boundary has been crossed. Whether I've let someone cross my own boundary, or I haven't held my boundary, or I'm experiencing a boundary that is not appropriate for me. And so I think it's a great place to get curious about what's actually underneath. Okay, I'm angry, yes, but what else is going on? If anger is a symptom of that. And then I also just going back to the channeling it in the gym. I'm feeling the energy growing right now. Yeah, I can't wait to go do some push-ups after this. Because it's powerful if we can tap into that. And the shadow of the lover, if I think if we let go and we stop nurturing it, we start getting, they talk about in King, Warrior, Magician, Lover too, and in men's work, the importance of polarity, of having those two different magnets come together. But if they each start to get the same charge, they don't attract the same way. So I feel like we can get neutralized in relationships, and couples stop and men and stop having sex, or you just go to masturbation, or you're shutting down. And so I think, part of that working out and exercising and getting into your somatic body and getting into that deep primal energy or aggression is actually something that we can nurture to power our bodies and bring more of our masculine energy forward. I mean, my wife loves that, it's like, yes, she married a sensitive, sweet guy, but without me also having that masculine edge, I just become, I become a friend. I don't become a lover anymore. So I think that's important to speak forward in today's society.
Mm-hmm. The way you nurture yourself in that way to stay grounded in your masculine, so that you can be, like you said, you can be a lover and not just a friend to your wife, and to keep that fire going, you have to keep up that yang charge, so that her yin charge is attracted to you, and your yang charge is attractive to her.
Yeah. I mean, it's like,
yeah,
we could get like some, analyze her. I think the important thing again is to keep it on ourselves, and what can we do? Like if I'm not exercising regularly, I'm not sexually engaged with my body. I get tired, depressed. I start eating more. I don't feel sexy. I don't look sexy. I don't appear sexy, So I think nurturing some of that energy, Damien, that you're talking about is really important for us today. You don't have to be like, go bang heads with dudes all the time. But like, find your inner warrior, light that up. I think we're so afraid of it today, especially, kind of post Me Too movement, where men are like, oh, I need to be more mindful. And then they're like, oh, I need to think about, I can't do anything. I can't be angry anymore. I can't, like, no, we just need, like you said, Damien, like we need grounded masculine. We need, more of that healthy masculine. It's not like don't be masculine.
Positive king energy,
yeah.
That internal order.
Yeah. Positive energy. Is that what you just said?
No. I mean, I guess it is, but that positive king energy.
King energy.
That inner differentiation from the different parts, because, as Carl Jung stated, like, we are a multiplicity. There are different parts. And Jordan Peterson so eloquently stated, different parts of your sub-personalities can hijack you. Anger, greed, sadness. You become a different person. And it can completely impact the way you speak, how you feel, and how you interact. And again, that order is knowing yourself. And I love that you brought up the polarities between the positive and negative poles of the archetypes, because as an actor, as an artist, you never want to like kill parts of yourself. You can kill qualities and acts, but you accept, like, hey, there's a part of me that wants to manipulate people, that's greedy, that wants to just fuck and wants to dominate. And by having that awareness, you're able to fight that war and to balance it internally, to go, okay, I know not to do that. Like, for me, I'm very aggressive. I'm a very aggressive person. And I know, like, hey, don't be an asshole today. That's like kind of my default. And by knowing that, I can better serve the relationships that I am trying to build and the projects I am trying to build. And so it just, as an actor, you need to have control, because if there's a character that is manipulative, you need to drop into that manipulation and play that.
Yeah. And I've played some pretty difficult characters that have been murderers or abusive, a lot of abusive people, a lot of unwell people, a lot of violent people.
When we met, actually, Ben, I was filming a music video with the director Lindsay Copeland in Brooklyn.
That's right.
And there was a scene where the singer, she's like this beautiful petite lady, and she's in a dress, and the concept of the song is my friends all think they know me, but they don't know. And so it's kind of, there's like 3 or 4 scenes, like classic music video style. There's like a couple different scenes that are filmed and then kind of cut together. But one of the scenes is she's like kind of in a bar, and there's like an envelope of cash being slid along the bar. And it's kind of just suggestive. But Ben, you working with you, even just in that tiny moment, I'm sure you did that as a favor to a friend, was powerful, man. You have such a professional presence, and I've learned so much from you over the years. I love.
Thank you. That means a lot, JJ. I want to say one more thing in there. Why I mentioned playing those roles is I look for the humanity in those people I'm playing, even the nastiest people who we feel like we ostracize in society. Like, I look for what makes them human when I play that role. So to speak to that, like what you're saying, Damien, in the you may play these parts and you got to tap into that, but also like I look at like what's the human side of this, right? So I think that's important to look at.
Before JJ jumps into this thought, I just want to say, like, it's so true. It's like you have to look at I believe as an artist, your responsibility is you have to look at the worst act a human can do and recognize that you're capable of that. If you don't acknowledge that or know that, you're either ignorant or you're naive, which is basically the same thing. But it's like, yeah, you're capable of murder, you're capable of all the worst acts. And again, Carl Jung has been a big influence on my ability to know myself and to build awareness. He said that the branches of a tree can't reach to heaven unless the roots reach to hell. And that's the full spectrum of human emotion and human behavior. But
Can you say that quote one more time, a little bit slower?
Yeah, it's the branches of the tree can't reach to heaven unless the roots reach to hell.
Beautiful. Thank you.
But I know JJ wanted to jump in with something. So what do you got?
Oh, I mean, just these conversations are so fun, and it's just such a balance to figure out how much space to share on the mic. And sometimes I feel like, I haven't really said much this episode, but it's also such an honor just to listen to people who are articulate and eloquent, who have so much to share or tell their story. I was actually just listening to a Lex Fridman podcast, and it's a 6-hour episode.
Wow.
So we've
just
been doing, well, I mean, I listened to it. I've been listening to it for a week. I think I've listened to about half of it so far, when I'm cooking or cleaning or jogging, sometimes with headphones on. But there's just so many things. I really just want to reflect back some of the things that we've been chatting about, because there's so many key points that are just important to repeat, to acknowledge. And one of the things, Damien, I actually really like that you said was how you see it less, you don't like the term toxic masculinity. You see it more about a mature masculinity versus an immature masculinity. And I think that's a really beautiful thing to say, because ultimately the mature masculine is a provider, is a protector. And there's so much right now in pop culture. Some people would say it's purposeful, and some people would say it's unconscious, but it's in our pop culture, there's more and more immature masculine being presented as if that's the norm, or if that's what's most common, is this immature, aggressive, maybe even, the masculine that's immature, that's unable to step up to be a protector and stuff. And so it's important that we publicize and magnify and discuss openly the idea of what mature masculinity is, so that we can continue to be role models for one another and for the upcoming generations. We need to continue to keep this concept rippling out into our society, that mature masculinity exists, mature masculinity is needed. We can't exist as a nation, as a world, unless these energies are balanced, right? And we're holding up, we are the pillars on which the next generation will stand. So I think it's important that we hold those energies in balance, and that we represent mature masculinity, and Damien.
JJ, I have a question for you.
Yeah, go for it.
A clarifying question. Just because I think it's important to hear and to say, when you say you see a lot of immature masculinity out there, I agree, but can you be specific? Like, what do you see that you would call immature masculinity for those of us or people listening who don't know, like, so that we can put a clear stake in the game? Like, this is what it looks like if you're mature versus not. Like, what are those signs that we can look for, or that you recognize as JJ is like, that's I don't know about that.
Sure. Yeah. Well, to frame a response to that question, I would say that the immature masculinity is immature masculinity arises in people who haven't had the opportunity of learning how to mature, or having good role models, having good examples of what it means to be mature masculinity. So, immature masculinity relates back to what we were talking about earlier, which is, if somebody has pain and they haven't done the work to heal it, or to become self-aware about their pain points and their traumas, then aggression can just spills through them. And it's, they might, whatever it is, cut somebody off driving down the road, or, just being rude, or, but if we're talking about, worse things, acts of sexual aggression, acts of, physical aggression, a bunch of teenagers walking down the street and they choose to, beat somebody up out of nowhere, these kinds of things. I'm trying to think about something in pop culture, but I guess the thing that really just kind of comes to mind is the representation of men as stupid or incapable. And it's just an odd thing to see in the being put on the front of the stage in the movies and stuff. But I could go deeper in that, but I have
like
to
even Barbie
some examples
dealt with that a little bit with the Ken was so stupid and they made him the idiot savant at the end, which is like kind of what Steven the Dell Dude was like, hey, I'm weird, but it's the I see that. And I had a beautiful interview yesterday in a podcast episode. It's coming out, I think Tuesday. It's called Lasting Conversations. The host was Heather Lockett, and she is of her similar generation. And she said, I remember even 30 years ago, there was this thing like men are idiots and women are bitches. She called it the bitch idiot syndrome. And we like encouraged, like, oh, my husband's such an idiot. And then the men would get together and we're like, oh, my wife's such a bitch. And then like it just kept these things going forward. And it's interesting where we still, I think it's tilting because now it's like, well, if you're gonna be here today, like how are you showing up? Women are getting clues on social media, maybe how they should be treated, but are they actually, are any of us holding healthy, bring it back to healthy boundaries? Like, do any of us have healthy boundaries for ourselves, for our partners today? If you let men off the hook, that's also like, if you're letting them walk on your boundaries, like we train people how to treat us, period. Whether it's conscious or not. So if we're being treated a certain way, it doesn't mean it's your fault if you're in an abusive relationship. But if you allow it, it is saying that it's action speaks louder than words. You're reinforcing that pattern over and over and over again. So anything I think we can do, just like this podcast, is why I love it, to highlight these things and say, actually, no, this isn't okay. Actually, we expect our men, our young men especially, to do better. We expect them to show up. We expect them to understand what integrity means. We expect you to know how to talk about your feelings. And hey, if you don't, like, come get in a men's group. We got you. There's generations of men that you can learn from.
There's generations of men that you can learn from. I love that, man.
Yeah, like intergenerational relationships.
I want to ask you a question. How would you compare who you were in your 20s to who you are now?
How would I compare? Well, to compare, I have the same heart. I have the same love and purpose and soul. But I think I've developed it's just a maturity. Like, I've learned to love myself. I didn't love myself in my early 20s. I didn't know how to love myself. I didn't know what that meant. The actions I took that were not congruent. Yes, I would go to yoga when I was hungover. Yes, I would go for runs when I had panic attacks, but that's not really loving myself. I still smoked cigarettes. I still drank a lot. I still did cocaine. I smoked weed till I passed out. I ate, a lot. I dated unhealthy people. I put myself in unhealthy situations. So I would say, like, well, I don't feel the need to experiment anymore. I feel like I did a lot of experimenting. I bartended in New York City. I lived a lot of lives. So like, being by today too, like a Friday night in my 20s, I always say you could measure how long someone's been in New York City when you first move there by how many nights a week they go out. Now, like, my favorite Friday night is on the couch with my wife and my dog, like, talking about how to make the world a better place, and maybe watching something that opens our eyes. Even if it's great storytelling. We're going to do a relationship flourishing seminar tonight together instead of watching TV. So, and I live in a small village of 800 people where I go on hikes every day, and then I choose to connect with humans. So in my 20s, I was like, I need to be in the middle of the chaos in New York City always. And I needed to have 5,000 appointments. So it's like I've learned to give myself space. I've learned how to be alone. I did not ever want to or choose to be alone in my 20s, ever. Even in my relation, even in my marriage, it took me a few weeks, like my best friend being like, buddy, your wife doesn't have to leave town for you to come visit me. You can come visit me while she's still in town. And I was like, no, I've got to be with her. And it's taken me decades to start to like, hey, babe, I'm going to leave. Like my wife was always the one that's like, leaving for 2 weeks, see ya. And I'm like, why don't you take me? Oh, I guess I should make plans with myself. And now I'm like, I have an incredible social life. And she's like, where are you going to be this week? I'm going with my buddies snowboarding. They're picking me up tomorrow. And I'm in an adult soccer league now. And I hadn't played soccer in 25 years. So I really do what I love. My life really works. And I have a lot of integrity and structure in, so I can like be in a band and be an actor and lead a business and be on a podcast. So it just took like, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of comparisons, but I think that's enough for now.
No, that was fantastic, man. That was fantastic.
Yeah.
You know,
I'm going to say one other thing actually just came forward, JJ. Thank you for your guys' grace as host.
No, go for it, man. This is a great conversation.
My father died since then, and I've had a miscarriage. I had the experience of being a father, and then it felt like taken away from me. So I've been through some rites of passage since then, and that's why I think intergenerational support and wisdom is so important in Dude Nation. Like my business partner is 20 years older than me. He's in a different generation. He works with young men. We work with a lot of different generations of people. I believe like we're reaching towards more young men, but we don't want just young men in our program. We also want the older men there so that we can all learn from each other, because the older men need to hear about masculinity today too. So I think, it's really important that we have intergenerational relationships too, and learn from each other.
I've always thought about how in other cultures, there's multiple generations in the house, right? There's grandkids and kids, and then mom and dad, and then the grandparents and aunts and uncles. And, we're tribal beings. It's important. I think I'm in my early 30s, and I'm often interacting with people from the age of 25 to, let's say, 55 at the top end of the range. And it's like, it's good to have things complete, like whole milk. You take the skim and you separate the parts, and it's not as nourishing. Like a full life is being surrounded by the full spectrum of what it means to be alive and to be human, and that's to be around people of all ages. We need the wisdom of our elders, and then we also need the inspiration of our youth. And if anybody's ever, if you're not a parent out there, but maybe you've held your friend's child. I mean, when you look into the eyes of an infant or a baby, you see the whole universe. And there's that I feel like that even those moments of seeing the child's eyes, they remind us to have a little bit of wonder, and to not take life so seriously, and to be lighthearted, and to be an open vessel for possibilities in life. And Ben, I just want to reflect back to all the work that you say you're doing with your wife to find the balance, and you two are just such creative people. I've been blessed to see you both perform musically, and
you shot one of the most amazing videos for Cassie Fireman. She's got this. Time to Go is the music video. She has a single. Look it up on YouTube. Cassie Fireman, Time to Go. It was shot in Osara, like the week we ran into JJ, and we're like, dude, come back here. We're gonna hire you and shoot videos and go surfing. It's like the greatest gift the universe could have given us that week.
Yeah, just to give myself my own little plug here.
Please, JJ.
That video, it was very spontaneous, and it was like, hey, let's just film something. And so we walk down the beach, and there's kind of a cliff there. And this is in Nosara, Costa Rica. And I had a little drone camera with me, a Mavic Mini 2, I think, and a Canon DSLR. And we just got some footage, and your wife, Cassie, it's such an expressive soul. She had her hands in the gravel and the dirt. She's climbing up this cliff. And then I flew the drone around and caught the sun setting behind the cliffs. I mean, you guys have to watch it.
used to be afraid to go anywhere without you. I used to always hide behind you.
Watch it.
It's
I'm gonna
epic,
leave it
and it's an
there, yeah.
incredible song.
Time to
She's an
go.
amazing songwriter. So yeah. And
Yeah.
JJ, like, I still get so much great feedback about my opening of my podcast and the video you created for me, to where, like, so you guys will have to just see an episode of Dude, You're Getting Well if you want to, or listen to it if you want to know. But at the opening, there's a part where I ohm and I say, dude. Dude, you're getting well. And that's basically how we open and close every Dude circle now because of you. Like, we all like chant Dude together, and it's actually become kind of a healing, fun thing. So thank you for that.
Hey, Damien, what's next?
Well, I was thinking the yin and the yang, where you're talking about extroversion and introversion, and the ability to have those boundaries to know, like, alone time. Like, I'm fiercely introverted. Like, I spend a lot of time alone. And I read a book called, I think it might have been Winning by Tim Grover. He was Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan's trainer. And he talked about people that are elite in their field. They crave the isolation. They need that time alone in the darkness. And since I was already predispositioned to spend inordinate amount of time by myself, I needed to figure out how to use that. So I think, I like what Tony Robbins says, what you practice in private will be exemplified in public. And I think that's true. And so I think a big part of masculinity is the security and the order of building yourself into something, which requires a lot of time by yourself to practice and really refine your skills. And so in your 40s, you found that, Ben, and now you have all these things going. You have a complex system of different businesses and parts of yourself that you seem to manage and balance with a centeredness and a stability. So I also think that way you contextualize your downs, and I'm so sorry to hear about the miscarriage and the passing of your father, but those dark times, I always know that I learn the most about myself when my cup gets refilled by a win in the good times, and I can look back through the dark times. So going through those two tragedies, what were the life lessons that you were able to pull from, and how do you practice them currently?
Thank you so much for asking that question. Men do not talk about death enough. We do not talk about grief enough, and we do not give our space. Grief is a rite of passage. It is important. If you do not grieve, it will come out some other way. Death is such an important part of life, and I think our greatest final act of living. And what was so amazing about going through the loss of my father, who was my best friend, and he's my guardian angel. I have a new, different relationship with him, was I just started my first men's group. It's now called Dude School, but it was the Lion's Den back then. And we were like in the second month of it, and my dad passed suddenly, and it was the only thing I could show up for was this men's group. And these guys held me. They're like, nope, you're not leading tonight. No way, dude. Nope, we got you. And that's when I really saw the importance of it. And with, luckily I had different generations of men in that group as well. And other guys talked about their loss. And I was like, oh my God, are you kidding me? We all have to go through this. This is horrible. Losing your parent is the worst. And this is what we spend most of our life as kids afraid of, is like losing our parents. And it's inevitable. And it's one thing that we're all going to go through. Everyone, no one's spared. So I think what was so beautiful is that I gained a curiosity about the beauty of grief and death and loss. And I got to live with my mom and sister for a few months for the first time in 23 years. My sister and I had not lived under the same roof in 33 years since she left college when I was 10. So we got to be like, try to learn how to be a family again. And it was so interesting, you know, because of my dad dying. Like, we were mad and closer than ever. And I want to say, like, the greatest gift I was given is that I saw that when we go through loss and heartache, if we stay curious and stay open and allow ourselves to be supported, because it's really easy to turn in and crumble, which is also, you know, it's okay to fall apart. But I think what I've worked on is allowing my heart to break, but break more open. And so the greatest gift I've been given is that as long as I'm able to talk about it, it's getting bigger. And I just meet like my dad's name is James, and the amount of men I met named James, like the month after he died, and like he loved black men, and the amount of black men I met named James, and then I felt this sudden like, oh, I'm supposed to be a dad. I'm supposed to lead men, like, just clear, like, I'm in my purpose. That's the answer I got. And then we were in Nosara. I think it was JJ, Cassie was pregnant when you shot that video. So like a few weeks before that, we decided we were going to try to have a baby. And like, we did the full thing. Like, she did a handstand afterwards, you know, to try to like keep all the semen like going the right way and all the things you do. And it worked. and we felt like we were happier than ever. And we were in Costa Rica, and we ended up buying a plot of land that year, and which we still have. And it just was like, life is going to work. Our dreams are coming true. When she was pregnant, I've never felt more sexually attracted to her in my life. And I was like my physiology changed. I'm supposed to be a dad. And then we went to get our first ultrasound to get the heartbeat and find out I think it was sex even. And they wouldn't talk to us. And we had to like find out later that there was no heartbeat. And we actually went through this incredible process. My wife managed to I don't know how to say it other, like, expel the fetus at home. And we had a burial, and we still go and visit it sometimes, and we prayed over it. And then like, one of the guys from my men's group then showed up at my door and gave me a hug, because he had lost several children. And he didn't even have to ask me how I was doing. He just showed up and hugged me. And, you know, for 1 out of 4 women have a miscarriage, and it is traumatic. But what we're not talking about is 1 out of 4 men, someone impregnated them, or someone was, you know, there's sperm involved, and some man has also lost a child. And we change physiologically when we're going to have a child energetically. So if you know, I'm starting to talk about, some of my friends have said like, oh my God, thank you. I haven't talked about ever the miscarriage we had 10 years ago, even though we have kids now. So I learned so much about the importance of grief and death and dying. And I have so many men and women thank me today and come back to me. And it reminds me, oh yeah, I still need to talk about this. It still hurts. I'm fucking pissed that I don't have a child with my partner. And I'm not sure if we ever will biologically again. And I'm still like, I'm getting to be with that. And then this amazing, mind-blowing, incredibly intelligent, most brilliant, loving dog I've ever been with in my life came into our life as a rescue. And we 3 months ago have adopted her. And we're getting to kind of co-parent. And I feel like it's kind of the universe sent us this gift in the meantime. So there's just so many beautiful miracles and blessings if we're willing to see them. And this is just, again, such a necessary, important part of life that's going to happen, has happened to everyone around you. So I think if we're not talking about it, it's okay if you're a man to have a full grief experience about the child that quote unquote your wife or girlfriend or person lost, because that is also belongs to you and has an impact on your life. So for anyone out there listening, like, I'm definitely someone you can talk to, but please talk to someone about it. Cause I think the cool thing about men's groups is the more we talk about this, like you and I, JJ and Damien, like we could be on the opposite end of the spectrum politically or religiously or even morally, but we're still going to go through this, all of us. It's why I think the pandemic connected us as a planet, because for the first time we all went through a global grief or trauma at the same time. We actually have an understanding, everyone, for the first time. It brought us together in a strange way, even though we were so isolated. So I think these things are important to learn from and talk about.
I want to say that, there's so much there. And the fact that you went through, the loss of your father, and then you lost a baby, and you didn't let it destroy you, that you were able to confront the grief and go through that and become wiser. I mean, that is masculinity. You grow when you can go through something that could destroy you and you just feel it and you let it just wash over you. I mean, there's a strength in that. And it speaks to the point of, like you asked JJ earlier, what's this toxic, immature masculinity? That's the very content that gets likes and attention on social media. It's the loud, unjustifiably confrontational content that, look, from a comedic standpoint, it's hilarious. I laugh at that stuff 100%. From how you live your life, it's absolutely atrocious. There's nothing honorable about it. And words like honor, nobility, integrity, responsibility, these are the elements of masculinity, and it's always about taking on the burden in a way that holds everybody up, that supports the community, that supports the kingdom. And again, Ben, for going through that stuff and still keeping your soul shining outward, trying to inspire, trying to uplift, being upbeat, being joyful. I mean, man to man, the utmost respect to you, sir. And for being able to share it with such elegance, it's what we need. We need more of it.
Thank you. Thank you. And I know I really appreciate the acknowledgement towards and being positive in the face of it. I'm pretty naturally positive, outgoing guy, but it's not something I like. I don't always feel that way. And so even if being like, this is the positive, is just speak your truth. Like that is so positive. It can be dark and really heavy, but it reminds me when I first started coaching, I put out all these videos like, you can do it today. And it was all like, come on. And
rah, rah, rah.
Yeah. And people were like, that's
this.
cool. I actually had a friend that unfollowed me because he was like, I can't handle that, dude. I don't relate to it. I am not in a good place. I don't want to hear any more of your positivity. And one day I had like a total meltdown, and something told me to share this. And I just went live on social media and I was like, hey world, I don't think you've seen me not okay. You've only seen me like, let's go. So this is what it looks like on a day when I'm not okay. And I was crying and I was talking about what I was going through, and the amount of messages of men that started to come forward, even like, how do you cry like that? Or, all these things. And I was like, oh my God, I've been trying so hard. All I have to do is be real and I'm going to reach more people. And I still have a client today he's been in our men's groups, worked with me one-on-one, and he's in the dude circles for life because he saw me cry. And he was like, I want to know how to do that. He's 20 years older. He hadn't processed anything. And since then he's dealt with his father wound. He's reclaimed a relationship with his father. Sex life has changed. His peace of mind has changed. He cares for his inner child now. Like, it's just amazing what these men are doing in the second half of their lives, just by willing to start. So if you're a young man, like, get yourself surrounded with some men who you respect and look up to, because that's how I learn. I have older men in my life that I look up to, that I feel like have grace, that have walked through these, just like you're saying, Damien, that I respect. I've learned to speak my truth from like my coach Preston, who would just when he was teaching us to make millions, would also say, I was a total asshole to my wife today, and be real. It's that's where we're going to grow. Not trying to be greater, but I tell my dudes like, hey, I'm struggling with this today too. I'm not the master Jedi, but I'm willing to learn, and I'm willing to be true. And those are the places where we grow.
The places we grow. Would you say that that was a major turning point for you when you decided, hey, I've never shared a day that I'm not well, so I'm going to go live and share. And like you said, somebody asked you like, how do you cry like that? Or you had so many guys responding more so than ever before. Well, first of all, so prior to that moment, and you were mostly posting positivity or only posting positivity, social media is really a highlights reel for everybody, right? And so we show the best moments of our lives and the best energy, and want to share the positivity. What would you say was shifted for you then? And also, what do you think made you, just what are your thoughts on that? Because before when you were only positive, and then when you went to sharing authentically, you've seen a total shift since then.
I needed to stop trying to be anyone other than me. I think that was the clearest message I got. Even when I was working with Preston a lot, and I talk about him because like he's like he's just mastered social media. He's like hit on everyone's social media a lot, Preston Smiles, and he's a great fucking coach. But one of the reasons I mention him is because like during his program, and I'm an actor, so I naturally I pick up on things. I absorb parts of people, and my wife's like, you sound like Preston in your videos. It's weird. You're like being Preston. And that was like some of the greatest feedback I got was like, oh yeah, I was trying to emulate something, but that wasn't my truth. That was his expression of him. That's not me. So I actually got more curious about like, who do I want to work with? What are my superpowers? What do I have to offer that's unique to me? Not like to the world, but if I could get curious about my superpowers, what would they be? And I think it was trusting my emotional intelligence more. I started to work with men. I called myself a self-sabotage and success coach or something like that. And I really focus on working with men who self-sabotaged. And it's still, those are like some of my favorite people to work with. Like anyone who's going through that cycle of they can't break out of themselves. That's where I was for decades. So, being willing to put down the bat, pick up the feather, and get curious about how to step in your life with integrity and purpose and authenticity and accountability. I think that's a big part. I now allow myself to be accountable. I've built a lot of accountability around me so that when I'm out of integrity with myself or other people, it's like dinosaurs chase me. I got my friends will show up on my doorstep. They'll call me out, they'll be real with me. And I thank them for that. Now I thank my business partners for like, I got called out last week on something.
We need more of that.
Yeah.
That's the most important thing. We become such a politically correct PC society. People are afraid to be bothered or to bother other people. But the thing is, if I'm out of line, I want my friends to point it out as soon as possible, so that I'm not wasting time doing something stupid or it's like
we are so powerful. You're so powerful, JJ. Yeah. Like we don't know that our dinosaur tail is like swinging around, taking out buildings while we're trying to find we're powerful beyond measure. So if we're not wielding that to our advantage, it can cause harm somewhere.
I've got a last question for you, Ben. We Damien often does a blueprint for our show, where Damien, I'm so grateful that you put the effort into this. He'll look over someone's social media a little bit and do a little research, that kind of thing, and put together some questions and give a little framework, a little guidance to keep the conversation moving in a direction. Often we go so far off the blueprint because you never know what you turn over a stone and you don't know what's going to be underneath it. And you've got such an interesting and beautiful life story, and where you're at now, and the direction that you're going in with Dude Nation. There's a million questions we could ask. This has really been one of the most easily flowing podcasts that we've recorded. We're well over an hour now, and so we're probably going to wrap up soon. But I want to ask you this last question that we have on here is it's a two-part question. Have you discovered any themes in what most men get wrong about emotional well-being? And how can we build our self-awareness to promote progression?
So ask those questions one more time. Have I noticed any themes about what most men get?
Yeah, what men get wrong about emotional well-being? So
okay. And then what was the other part?
And then what can we do to build our self-awareness and promote progression?
Oh, great. Awesome. I got this. Processing work. I'm so visual. So thank you guys for slowing down a little bit, because I want to make sure I'm getting your question.
I can put it in the chat too.
No, I got it. I actually did that for myself. So themes about what men get wrong. Oh, thank you. About emotional well-being. Well, that we have to take care of everyone else first. That our bank account is a reflection of how we're doing. That we have to have it all together, that we can't ask for help or have bad days or not be okay. So I think what I want to say that you, emotional well-being, also that like, if you're grinding and always being productive, that's moving the needle forward for you. I think we get that wrong. Grinding, can't think your way into right action. You can only act your way into right thinking. So without action, you cannot move the needle forward. However, you will burn out if you keep going on and on and on and don't pause. Actually, the science of the brain shows that if you take breaks every 25 to 30 minutes, it's actually optimizes the brain to take breaks. Even if you don't like to take breaks, or you're someone who flows, if you take breaks, you will get more done, period. If you drive home on the phone, it will statistically take you longer to drive home than if you drove home not on the phone. So the brain we can't actually multitask either. We can only monotask really a lot of little different things quickly, or all things at once. So I think like trying to multitask is also a way we can get emotional well-being done. It's actually important to tackle like one thing well, like get the biggest thing off on your plate and notice how you feel then. The amount, the year and a half it took me to do my 3 years of taxes after my dad died was so painful, and doing taxes got more and more and more painful, and it also got more distant the longer I put it off. And the greatest emotional well-being I did was just call someone, because I used to do them myself. So I finally said, does anyone have a great account? My buddy's like, yes, call this person. She was the cheapest, best person I've ever worked with. She was amazing. Ruth Beltran and Empire Tax Services in New York City. And it got off my plate immediately, and my emotional well-being went through the roof. So I think thinking that we have to have things figured out or need to do them by ourselves and doing them alone. How can we build our self-awareness to promote progression? Don't do anything alone. I took this on last month. I decided not to. I literally tried, and I know, Damien, this might be confronting too, but it is a test for myself. I tried not doing anything alone. Like if I read a book, I'd have someone else read a book. If I was going to look over my finances, I'd have someone double check my work. If I was going to do a new thing in my business, I'd practice checking with my business partner even more. I'd share ideas. I'd run things by people before I did them. And suddenly I noticed everything elevating because I was allowing myself to be contributed to, and the power of, the sum of all parts is greater than one. So it's an incredible thing. Like, I'm also a solo musician, but when I play with a band, the level of musicianship and energy is like through the roof. So if you want to build self-awareness, which is the first key, you can't do anything without awareness, acceptance, action. You can't change anything without becoming aware first. So if you're not aware, build accountability around you. Get in a men's group. Have people hold you accountable and hold space with you. And I think that's it. That's the solution.
That's a beautiful response.
Well said. Thank you, Ben, for coming on this podcast. It's been very illuminating. So where can we find you on social media and anything you want to plug upcoming in the next couple of months?
Hell yeah. So thank you. Ben Curtis Official is my Instagram. Dude.school is the work I lead for men. And DudeCon is February 9th and 10th. It is a global live summit for healthy masculinity on the planet. We have 10 speakers coming from around the world, speaking on everything from powerful masculinity and victory mindset, former NFL players to published queer theorists speaking on queer masculinity and what's missing in that world, to women speaking on the importance of women's work for men, how to understand different genders, to sex, trauma, relationship work. We have some of the greatest. Preston Smiles is speaking there. Michael Unbroken, who's run thinkunbroken.com, one of the greatest speakers on adult male trauma in the world. It's going to be one of the most incredible things. There's going to be a speaker for everyone, and some people you may not like or agree with, which I hope. And some people you'll be like, thank God they're there. And other people will be like, why the hell is this person there? So we really are looking at the different aspects of masculinity today to challenge our norm and how we can rise together and learn from each other. So I'm also inviting every single man and men's group on the planet to come participate, learn from us, get involved. If you want to be a sponsor, we actually can give you a booth to share your own program in men's work there. We're not out to be the elite men's organization. And we built Dude Nation so that we can be an umbrella for all men to learn from each other. And we are open to growing and learning as an organization. So this is the first ever DudeCon 2024. If you look up any of like DudeCon 2024, that's all you'll probably see, but it's all over my social media too. And it's 2 days. And for all you men who, some of the greatest resistance today is our wallet or bank account. It's $1. We want it to be a no-brainer for you to be there. And we want you invested. So it's not just another free thing you say you're going to do, you don't do, and you let yourself down and you get to be right about why your life doesn't work. So pay $1, or you can pay $49 for a VIP all access. We also are building a scholarship fund. So for any man who wants to be in a men's group but can't afford it, we actually have a scholarship fund to cover you. And we send 10% of all our proceeds in Dude Nation to a community in Gambia that is single-handedly feeding families around there. And a man is leading that because he believes his village deserves better. So that's a lot of the work we're doing, how you can find me and what I'm up to next.
Wow. Man, you are a powerhouse. You're an absolute powerhouse. Ben Curtis, it has been such a pleasure to have you on the Evolution Now Project podcast. This has been episode number 25. To everybody watching, I hope you enjoyed. Follow us, listen to the podcast, and keep growing, everybody.
Keep growing, people. Absolute pleasure, Ben. We'll have to have you on again, 100%.
Yeah, this is so awesome. I wish I could do this every week. It was great. Thanks, guys.
Awesome.